Hello and welcome to a new episode of Life with Diane and Nick. Today we are going to make cheddar cheese. I got the recipe from the New England Cheesemaking website and it is by Jim Wallace. If you have never made cheese or if you haven't done so, please first see my video about basic cheese making hygiene to prepare. So let's get started. These are our ingredients. We need 3 gallons of pasteurized milk, not ultra pasteurized. I'm using the Costco brand, the Kirkland brand, because it gives me a pretty good curd. For cheese cultures, we are using mesophilic cheese cultures from the New England Cheesemaking company. And the cheese culture we are using is C101, and we will be using 1 envelope for the recipe. We will also use half a teaspoon of calcium chloride and about a little bit over half a teaspoon of single strength rennet, and we also need salt. Now to the equipment. We need a pot that holds 4 gallons or more, and it has to be stainless steel or enamel so that it doesn't react with the milk. We need small measuring spoons, and with that I mean half a teaspoon or less. We need a thermometer, a long knife or curd knife to cut the curds, cheesecloth, a large colander to drain the curds, and a cheese mold for the pressing. And the cheese mold has to handle at least 3 pounds of curds. We also need a cheese press for this recipe. And for the finished product, you need a space where you can age the cheese at a temperature of about 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 to 4 months. I myself am using a fridge with a temperature controller. The first step is to fill the milk into the pot and to heat it to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. You have 2 ways to do this. You can do it over direct heat on the stove, but then you have to keep the heat very small and constantly stir the milk so that it doesn't form hot spots and the milk protein gets destroyed. A much better way is to heat it in the hot water bath, and so you have to still stir it occasionally, and it gets heated a lot slower, but it also gets heated a lot more carefully, and this is the method that I prefer. The milk is now at 86 degrees Fahrenheit and it's time to add the ingredients. I will add calcium chloride first. I'll mix half a teaspoon with a 1/4 cup of cool chlorinated water, and then I stir it into the milk. It is now time to add the cultures. I cut open the envelope and carefully sprinkle the cultures over the surface of the milk. Let them briefly rehydrate and then stir them in. The covered pot needs to sit undisturbed for 90 minutes. The cultures have acidified the milk for 90 minutes, and now it's time to add the rennet. I'm adding a little bit over half a teaspoon of rennet to a 1/4 cup of cool non-chlorinated water. I add the rennet to the milk and stir it in with an up and down motion. After that, the milk has to sit undisturbed for an hour so that the rennet can do its work and solidify the milk. The milk is solidified and I'm testing for a clean break. And I can see that the clean break is occurring. So I will now cut the milk into 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch pieces. I'm now now doing a 10 to 15 minutes very slow stir. The curds are still very soft and they need to firm up. During this time, if the temperature has dropped, put it back into the water bath and heat it back up to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. It is now time to cook the curds. That means that we have to raise the temperature of the curds slowly over half an hour to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I achieved this by putting the curds back into the water bath and taking them out as needed, so the temperature is raised slowly. The curds are now at 102 degrees Fahrenheit and they have changed quite a bit. As you can see, they're a lot smaller and they have shed a lot of liquid, which we call whey. We will now keep them at this temperature for 30 to 60 minutes and dry them further. Don't forget to keep stirring. I've now been stirring the curds for half an hour and they are not mushy anymore, but slightly resistant to pressure. So you probably ask yourself if there's a test so that you know when you can stop stirring and when they are dry and firm enough. And there is. Let's take a look. Make sure your hands are very clean. Take a spoonful of the curds, put them in your hand and push them together under medium pressure. If they are mushy, they will consolidate into a single mass. But if they are dry enough, you will be able to separate the single pieces with your thumb. And as you can see, these curds are separating into single pieces. So we are ready to go to the next step. If they are not, then you have to keep stirring. The curds have now dropped under the whey and I will lower the level of the whey until it is about 1 inch above the curds, and then I will put the rest of the whey and the curds into a colander that is lined with cheesecloth and sits in a larger bowl. The curds are not quite covered by the whey as the recipe requires, but there is enough whey in there to help settle the curds into one solid mass. Wait about 15 to 20 minutes and then drain off the rest of the whey. We are now going into the cheddaring phase, which gives the cheese its name. In this phase, the curds are pressed and drained while they are being kept warm. I have now knotted the curds tightly into the cloth, flipped them around, and put a gallon of warm water on top of them. In addition, I put very warm water into the sink to keep them warm. I'll come back in half an hour and we will see what they look like. After half an hour, the curds have consolidated into a nice slab. When I cut the slab apart, you can see that the curds have elongated considerably. I'll stack the two pieces on top of each other with the cheesecloth in between and wrap it up again. They go back into the colander with the hot water bottle on top, and every 30 minutes I go back to them and flip them around and keep them draining. At every turn, taste the whey that runs off the curds. It will go from sweet and milky to neutral until it becomes slightly acidic. When that is the case, you know that the cheddaring process is coming to an end. After 2 hours, the slabs have become very thin, and the taste of the whey tells me that the acid development should come to an end. When I break the slabs apart, you can see that the curds that were very round in the beginning have become very thin and flattened now. The final steps are to break down the slabs into walnut-sized pieces, weigh them, and add 2% of the weight in salt, mixing in the salt very well. For the final step, the pressing, I line a mold with cheesecloth and fill the curds into the mold. Don't be shy and pack in the curds very tightly so that they fill every little nook and cranny. I fold the cheesecloth over carefully, put on the follower, and put it in the cheese press for 1 hour at 20 pounds of pressure. All right. Our cheese has been in the press for an hour now, and let's take a look how well it is consolidated. Let's take out the follower here. And here is our cheddar. Come out of here. So, of course it has a lot of cracks, but we can already see how it starts coming together. Now let's flip it over and put it back into the mold. Cover it again, put the follower on top, and it goes back into the press at 20 pounds for 1 hour, then 40 pounds for 4 hours, and then 24 hours at 50 pounds, and it's flipped at every stage. Our cheddar has come out of the mold after the final pressing, and it finally looks like it should. It is nicely consolidated. I see a few tiny cracks, but I'm not really worried about them. The cheddar is now ready for drying and final processing, and I will put it on a clean surface for 2 to 3 days at room temperature. And then afterwards it will spend a minimum of 4 months at 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 80% humidity in my aging space. To prepare it for the aging space, we can do one of several things. The first thing that we can do is to leave it as is and let it age with a natural rind. But for 4 months, that takes a lot of daily upkeep. The second thing we can do is cloth bind it, which is a very interesting technique and will be the subject of a later video. And the third thing, which I will actually do, is I will wax it. It is the easiest way to age the cheese for me, and it will be in my next video. And happy cheese making. Thank you for watching Live with Diana and Nick.